Welcome back to another episode of Marvel Man 901. So, today I'm going to talk about Spider-Man comics. I'm going to start off with Spectacular Spider-Man, then move on to Solo, Marvel Comics Presents, Amazing Spider-Man, and finally Aquaman. So, I'm going to start off with Spectacular Spider-Man issue 214 from 1994. This continues the battle against Bloody Mary, or Typhoid Mary, or any of the other personalities basically. So, Spider-Man obviously had a lot of trouble with MJ, her being very worried about him and all that, especially now when this Typhoid Mary person actually even ruined their entire apartment. So naturally Spider-Man couldn't just not do anything, of course, he has to stop Mary, so he goes out and apparently Typhoid and Bloody Mary had found their victim, who was, of course, a woman beater, a killer even, and now Typhoid basically played the victim, and then she attacked as Bloody Mary. Spider-Man came just in time. He basically stopped Bloody Mary and he fought her in a very violent fight. Eventually, though, he actually managed to reach Mary Walker, or the fourth personality, called Just Walker. This personality apparently knew everything that had been happening, and she was kind of personality that would basically make everything right. So what she did, of course, was to turn herself in and basically confessed everything, and she just wanted to be well. So she was then turned over to Ravencroft. Okay, so we're gonna move on to Solo issue 1 from 1994. In this issue, we basically see Solo fighting the terrorist organization known as Ares, and then realizing that his ex-girlfriend, Rowena, actually was a member of the terrorist organization. A little bit later, Spider-Man also fights the terrorist organization, for other reasons naturally, but apparently they wanted some kind of documents that had some information about all their members, something like that. Anyway, we also learn about the origin of Solo, first time actually, which is basically that Solo, before becoming Solo naturally, born, he and 11 others, I believe, were basically forming this NATO team of specialists team basically, where they had been basically involved in this spatial displacement or teleportation experience, or experiment, sorry. Anyway, the leader of this team, called Gant, basically was a traitor. He wanted to use this spatial displacement or teleportation or whatever to create Ares, which he did. However, Solo, or Born at this time, he wasn't really into this, and unfortunately though, Rowena was. So basically this basically birthed Solo. So kind of interesting. Alright, so we're gonna move over to Marvel Comics Presents 157 from 1994. This continues the storyline known as Altered Spirits, that is of course involving vengeance. So in the previous issue, Phantome basically stole Vengeance powers, becoming a new, not exactly spirit of vengeance, but yeah. Anyway, Michael Bardolino wakes up in a homeless shelter and realizes that he has no powers. But he kind of feels free, because before it was basically just a curse, having this hellish power, having to fight and even kill. And now he could just basically live his life, do good. Although he does see on the news later on that Phantome is basically wreaking havoc, and he realizes that someone needs to stop her, and that someone has to be me. So moving on, basically continuing the next issue. Moving back in time now to 1965. This is Amazing Spider-Man issue 26. So the Crime Master and the Green Goblin are basically rivals over taking over the New York gangs. Spider-Man actually is investigating Crime Master, as this is a new crime lord-ish, and he naturally believes that Foswell, or Frederick Foswell, previously known as the big man of the Enforcers, was actually behind all this. You might know that J. Jonah Jameson had actually hired Foswell as a reporter, basically because of his connections and all that. Anyway, while this is happening, of course, Spider-Man has to use a fake costume that he buys in a costume shop because his costume is naturally destroyed or injured, whatever, damaged. Anyway, this costume he needed to basically web up so that it sticks up, basically. Anyway, Spider-Man investigates, or basically follows Crime Master, but then is attacked by Green Goblin, and is actually defeated by the Green Goblin. And if it hadn't been for the whole fake costume and webbing stuff, he would actually have been unmasked by the Green Goblin as well. But Green Goblin does the second best, so he basically brings Spider-Man's body into this grand meeting of the gangs of New York, where the Crime Master is basically saying that he will take over, and then Green Goblin basically puts Spider-Man up as a bargaining chip to take over. Okay, so over to DC now. This is Aquaman issue 22 from 1964. So we meet Hila, who is actually Mera's twin sister. They look exactly the same, naturally. And she apparently needed some help against her lover called Kandor. Apparently Kandor was a bit of a villainous guy, and they have been, well, he is basically been threatening Hila and stuff like that. So obviously Aquaman and Mera fights this guy, and eventually though he kind of changes his mind as he realizes that he has still strong feelings for Hila when she's basically hurt during the last fight. So that ends that, and thanks for watching. I hope you have enjoyed. Do subscribe if you like this. All of this is of course Marvel's and DC's creations. I'm only telling stories. Stay safe out there.